isn't, that it's not part of the rest. It's simply a separate statement. So that's what we do.
Everyone please rise and join us for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the minutes from the meeting held on November 29th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Stephanie?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the minutes from November 29th? All in favor? Thank you. Citizens' comments. Any comments? We'll start online, please.
If anyone online likes to make a comment, would you please push that raise hand button on Zoom? We have a request.
All right, if you would.
If you would unmute, please. Karen and Jesse's iPhone.
Hi, thank you. Nice to speak with you all again. So first, I'd like to express my appreciation for all the steps the district is taking to keep our kids and community safe. My husband and I have been just so grateful for all of the things that you all are doing, like pool testing, the upgraded ventilation system last year, the mask mandate, and then all of the vaccination clinics you've been hosting. Thank you. And then second, I'd like to advocate for extending the mask mandate, and we'd like to advocate for that for 3 reasons. First, while I think our district is making great progress with vaccinations, our vaccination rate, particularly among 5 to 11-year-olds, is not high enough that we can rest comfortably, I think, on that rate for keeping transmission low. We know breakthrough cases are still possible, particularly until those vaccination rates get higher. And although our 6-year-old is now fully vaccinated, which we have great relief in that, masks add a really comforting layer of protection. They're not perfect, but we know that they help. Second, we're already dealing with a new highly transmissible variant, one which we still have a lot to learn about, and masks are one tool we have for reducing that transmission. And then finally, our healthcare system, as I think many of us have heard about on the news and have also experienced perhaps within our families, our healthcare system is overwhelmed with record COVID hospitalizations, ICU numbers, and people on ventilators. And I think out of respect for them and to protect the most vulnerable in our community, I think we need to do our part to not add fuel to the fire. And so we hope the board extends the mask mandate to help protect all members of our district and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay, would you please unmute?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Lindsay Lecce. I'm a Woodstock resident, mother to 2 Woodstock elementary students. I'm also the middle school dean of students. And I want to share 2 points with you tonight. First, I want you to know that faculty and parents have contacted me in regards to an item on tonight's agenda with concern. While I know now is not the time for you to respond to my comments, I would like you to know that it would be very helpful for folks to understand why mandated masking is on tonight's agenda. I choose to hopefully assume that you are making an effort to simply follow up on your initial determination that it would be visited on a regular basis. If, however, there are other reasons for this item being discussed and voted on tonight, I caution what message and how that might be interpreted, that you either didn't listen or didn't care to what our district nurse and administrators told you at the last meeting. But I think an explanation would be very helpful for folks to hear. And I'm not sure if my input will be solicited later, but I wanted to state that I stand 100% with my colleagues in the feedback that they have already provided you. Nothing has changed. In fact, things are growing more concerning. I have a unique role in our school that I work with students on a daily basis. I teach classes. I meet with the majority of our faculty once a week, and I'm directly involved in the arduous task of contact tracing and quarantine processes. Not only is this last role time-consuming, but it is emotionally taxing. I often have the unfortunate job of contacting parents, breaking the news to my students. I bear the brunt of a lot of their frustration, disappointment, worry, and anger, and it pains me. None of us want any of this. Universal masking helps to mitigate many instances of quarantine and hopefully prevents the spread in school. I'm emphatically against any changes to our current practices at this time, and I thank you for your consideration of my perspective and input.
Anybody else online, Mike?
No, we're good online.
Alright, thank you. Anybody here would like to comment? Citizen comment? Sure.
Yes, Coburn. My name is Isla. I'm in 6th grade at Custer Middle School. I'm 11, almost 12 years old, and I am fully vaccinated. I'm here tonight to say that we need to continue to be masked in school. I have had to do community quarantine 4 times this year. It's not fun. Some of my best friends have gotten COVID-19 this year in school, and we are wearing masks. Just think about what you are putting ourselves into if we do not mask. There will be tons of more COVID cases each week. This is a virus that is deadly. It has killed over 5.34 million people worldwide. We need to act now and mask in our schools to do our best to keep COVID-19 out. Some of you board members came in tonight with a vote that was going to make no masking. That vote needs to change. Just imagine if you got a phone call saying your child has COVID-19 because he or she was not wearing a mask. We need to mask up and change your votes tonight. If we take away the mask mandate, then I am sure that a handful of kids will be taken out of school. I will be one of those kids because I do not want to go home at night thinking that I might be bringing COVID home to my family, especially my 2-year-old sister who is too young to have a vaccine. We are all tired of wearing masks, and yes, we want to be maskless, but I am sorry to say that right now is not the time. You need to continue to wear masks at school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Citizens comments? Seeing none. Board member comments? Seeing none. Don't have anything for the chairman's report tonight. Committee board meetings. Our next board meeting we'll be approving this later, but Monday, February 7th here, 6:30. Education Committee meets Thursday, January 20th at 3:15. Facilities Committee, January 20th at 2 o'clock. Finance Negotiations, February 24th, 4:15. And Region 9's next meeting is January 5th, 6 p.m. at Region 9. Committee reports. Education Committee, Stephanie?
Yes, the Education Committee met this past Wednesday, December 15th, 3:15. We had a great meeting. We had the opportunity to meet our new curriculum coordinator, Shelly Mogul, and she took us up to speed on what she's been up to, and took us through the curriculum review cycle and the timeline proposed. After that, we heard from Lindsay Smith, who's the director of our North Star program, and she's kind of gave us a brief history and goals and wishes for the future. Their grant cycle is coming to an end in the next year or so, and it's just such a fantastic program that helps so many of our students and some of our most vulnerable students. So we are putting in an effort to see if we can continue funding that. You'll be hearing from her later, so I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but it was a great meeting. And we, like I said, we're going to meet again Thursday, January 2nd.
Thank you. Facilities. Marcy's not here.
They haven't met since the last meeting.
Okay. And I don't believe Finance Committee's met since the last one either, so. Region 9, Norman, Berta, let's see them, so. Alright, turn it over to David, the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and happy holidays to you all. Since the last meeting, we've had some appointments that have been made I'd like to fill you in on. Pleased to tell you that we've hired Michelle Richardson, CPS Food Service. She'll be starting soon. And we'll be replacing Tracy Walker, who I announced left at the last meeting. And we appreciate Tracy's many years of service in the district as well. Michelle worked for us at one point years ago, and it's great to have her back. Very, very personable, very outgoing, and I think she'll be great with the kids and with the program. Telstar High School appointment since the last time we met. AV Club, Mr. Brooks Morton, over here to my left. Brooks, wave to everybody. If you're really nice to him, he'll get you on camera. Nordic Ski Coach, Kristen Powell. Drama Club Advisor, Elke Blouse. Telstar Middle School appointments, Girls JV Basketball Coach, Natasha Howard. Nordic Ski Coach, Colleen Raymond. And Alpine Ski Coach, Mark Duchart. And no resignations and no transfers at this point in time. I'm going to skip back down to a couple of other quick items, and then we'll come back to our presentation tonight. I am pleased to tell you that U.S. News and World Report issued its annual summary of best elementary and middle schools across the country, and they did it by state. And I'm very pleased to tell you that Woodstock came in at number 29 out of 225 schools in Maine, and CPS came in at number 43 out of 225 schools. So kudos to our elementary schools. And our middle school came in number 21 out of 123. So those are very good scores. If you look at the lineup, the vast majority of the schools that are any top 10 or whatever are all in this very southern part of the state. So this is very good performance, and I think speaks well to the efforts that our people have been making on behalf of our kids. And those scores are determined by a combination of math and reading scores and socioeconomic status. So they have a formula that they put that all into, and they come up with the results. And so it's posted. I always caution people, I always take all of these individual results, individually, because they are what they are. And but I think in this particular case, it's worth noting that the 3 schools that would have been looked at as a result of these reviews all scored in the top 30% in the state. So that's great. COVID-19, just a couple of very quick updates. Pool testing is on hold for the next 2 weeks. That's a state determination, not an SAD 44 determination. They've closed it down during the holiday break, so we will not be having pool testing. I know that there are some families who have contacted us and are hoping to make arrangements to have their kids tested because they're in that cycle, and so we know that there are some agencies in the area. I know Rosemary has worked with a bunch of them. I know Norway does some of that testing too, and I think locally it can be done as well. Also, it kind of lines up, I guess, with tonight's conversation later on, but I received an email from Carl Costanzi down in South Paris area, Norway area, and he passed on some information from Dora Mills. Dora's a Chief Health Officer for Maine Health. And she just indicated that it's very important at this point in time that we remind people how important it is to really get those vaccinations if you're eligible to. If you're eligible for a booster, to get that. Focusing on lowering the density of the number of people that you meet with over the vacation week during the holidays. To continue to mask, to employ social distancing in household pods in the event that you are unmasked. To ventilate, get outside as much as possible, and if you're going to be meeting, if you can meet outside, that's great. If not, opening up the windows and turning up the heat when inside, and to test. If you can find affordable antigen tests, to do that as you see fit. She pointed out too that 3 weeks ago, the Omicron variant in Denmark accounted for 2% of the tests, of the positive tests that were received. The following week it was 7%, and last week it was 53%. So it's kind of an indicator, she says, based on what we should be expecting in the United States. So the Omicron is kicking in. We all know it's much more transferable than even the Delta. And so that's just information that I received today. I wanted to pass that on. TFA, Telstar Freshman Academy, is doing their think tank. I know that you've received invitations. It's coming up at the end of January. And I think at this point so far, I've been told that Cheryl and David Jones and Maggie and Stephanie Herbeck have all indicated that they'd like to be involved in that. And it's not too late if you decide that you are interested. You can either respond to Norm Greenberg in that email that he sent, or you can let me know and I'll pass that on. And that would be great. It's a great experience. If you haven't done it before, I would definitely urge you to do it. It's time well spent for sure. And with that, I will turn it over to our program tonight. Very pleased to have Lindsay Smith. Stephanie Herbeck just mentioned that Lindsay joined the Education Committee meeting last week. And we asked her also if she would come tonight and bring along her compatriot, Ryder Scott. And Ryder, as most of you know Ryder, he's the Executive Director at the University of Maine 4-H Centers. And I just want to start off by saying that the North Star program is one of a number of different opportunities that we've had to work together with 4-H Learning Center. Probably the first biggest event was the creation and continuation of the Telstar Freshman Academy. And that really led to our positioning to be able to get this grant, which was a $600,000 grant over a 6-year period of time. And it's been a great experience, as Stephanie mentioned. And you've had parents who have come here in the past who have spoken to you about the program, and I think complimented Lindsay, who's done just a fabulous job in taking on an awful lot of responsibility. I said to her the other night, I don't think she's the kind of person that can go to an animal shelter and come home with one dog. So with that, Lindsay, I turn it over to you and Ryder, and if the two of you could either come on up or stay where you are and speak out with your playground voice, that'd be great. Welcome.
Brooks, is there a good spot you'd like us? Anywhere?
Anyway.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna get started. So thanks for having me. Thanks for the great introduction, Dr. Murphy. And it's my pleasure to really just to kind of frame this up a little bit, tell you a little bit about the history of how we started the North Star program, and then most importantly to introduce Lindsay. So we can go ahead and skip to the next slide. That'd be great. So back in 2017, a guy named Don Carpenter, who is the Senior Program Officer for the Lerner Foundation, approached me, and it was kind of odd because he'd take me out to coffee, and then a month or two later, invite me to lunch, and he was really building a relationship and trying to learn more about our organization, the University of Maine 4-H Center at Bryant Pond, and specifically asking me about our relationship with this school district. He wanted to know he had a lot of questions, a lot of great kind of probing conversations about the depth of this relationship and what we were able to do together. And first and foremost, it was, are you working with students in the long term? So there's many outdoor education organizations that have students from in the school year come for short-term experiences and things like that. And of course, we do open enrollment summer camp at our 4-H camp in the summer. But the relationship between the district and the 4-H Center was seen as quite a bit different. Dr. Murphy spoke to this a little bit. So what I didn't realize was that all of this was, I just thought he was, being friendly and certainly curious, and I knew he represented the foundation, but I didn't quite understand what was about to come, which was that we were invited to apply for a 6-year award to take part in what was called the Aspirations Incubator. Back in 2017, we were one of only 8 organizations selected around the state, and all of them were nonprofit youth development organizations with a close partnership with their local school district. So, as I said, it was and Dr. Murphy did as well, it was a $600,000 award. We're now in year 5. It seems hard to believe. I sat right at the other end of the room when we first got this award, and Dr. Murphy and I made the announcement, and it felt like 6 years was a long time, and we had a big runway to create this program. But the time has gone by really fast. Just a little bit about the program before I introduce Lindsay, who will tell you a lot more detail. it's based on an organization that's in Rockland, Maine, that partners very closely with RSU 13, the Rockland Middle School and High School. And it's a long-term mentorship program. So students enroll in 7th grade. They're paired up in cohorts and with an adult, at least one adult mentor who's either a paid staff member with the organization or a volunteer. But the difference here is that they stay together as a cohort and they stay with their mentors all the way through high school graduation. So it's long-term, impactful mentorship programming. The other thing that's different about this program is that, so we do summer camp in the summer, and you can sign up to come for archery camp or paddling camp. And that's the focus. The focus is the activity. The mentorship happens because our staff are trained and they're great role models and things like that. Aspirations Incubator programming flips that around. It puts the relationship at the center. So any activity that we're doing with the kids, first of all, the youth have a lot of voice and choice. They get to decide. And it's primarily out of school time, although Lindsay does spend a lot of time in this building, both at the middle school and the high school now. But the activity is just the vehicle for that relationship building, for that mentorship. Go ahead and skip to the next slide. And yeah, so our goals are to expand horizons with the students through this mentorship process, raise aspirations for meaningful futures, whether that be college, whether it's a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, or a meaningful career and entry into the workforce. To increase resilience, that's to really give our students the tools to deal with traumas that they may have experienced, to have the tools to really bounce back from those experiences. Leadership and community building. Our goals are to really be a support network for students and families. This was never more evident than when we were all in lockdown due to COVID. School had gone completely remote. What we found was our in-person programming at Bryant Pond 4-H Center came to a screaming halt. We didn't do summer camp in 2020. We had to, all of our classes were remote. Telstar Freshman Academy went 100% remote, as did all the classes here in the building, as you all know. But North Star was almost immune from that because we were still able to reach out and connect with those students because Lindsay and the volunteers had developed those trusting relationships. We were still able to provide those supports. Our guiding principles with North Star are, first of all, some of the other recipients of the Learner Foundation funds charged families for participation in the program. It was really important to us that it be free and that money was not a barrier to participation. So North Star is free. Students raise a lot of the money that they then use to participate in activities and things like that. But that's part of the whole process. We talked about the caring adult mentors as well as peer leaders, team leaders. And I think I'm gonna actually let Lindsay address the rest of these topics. It is my immense pleasure. Stephanie mentioned having a great presentation from Lindsay at the Education Committee meeting. Dr. Murphy has sung her praises as well. I just can't say enough what an amazing person Lindsay has been. We were just so fortunate that she was already working for us at Bryant Pond when we got this opportunity. She was ready for the next step in her career and slid into the director of the North Star program. And she has just done an outstanding job. So turn it over to Lindsay.
Great, thanks, Ryder. Okay, Mike, you can skip to the next one. So I'm going to go through, Ryder said I'd go in detail. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail because there's a lot to what we're up to, but I'm going to give you kind of the basics of where we're looking at what we've been up to and where we're kind of going. So Like Ryder mentioned, we start in 7th grade with students, and so that first 6 months of 7th grade is kind of our recruitment period, and so we're in classrooms, in the school building, starting to build relationships. We're partnering with teachers when they need extra support in their classrooms. We're partnering with the guidance department. As we all know, we don't have a middle school guidance counselor at the moment, and so North Star kind of acts as an extra wing for student support in those ways. And we also run the Giving Closet here in the building and have an office here at school, and that's a free thrift store. And so we stock that with clothing and goods, from toiletries to belts to just about anything that students can need. Sometimes we have food in there as well. And that's a resource that we've been really blessed to be able to support and bring to the district. Okay, and then our other piece, so we're in the school a lot, but most of our programming is happening in out of school time. And so I would say about 2 nights a week, we're trying to do some type of after school activity with students, whether that's in their specific cohorts, having meetings, or if it's an optional program that any North Star student or any student that's kind of in that recruitment phase can show up to. And so in the wintertime, we ice fish, we go skiing and snowboarding. We do a lot with the outing club. We do art classes and just all kinds of things in between, just trying to hit on the different hooks that we can engage students with and trying to find some of those sparks and interests to help them develop. Okay, so 7th through 12th grade, we have what we call core programming, and so that's like what we encourage students to show up for. That's where we count attendance. It's kind of considered our mandatory programming. And the meetings are considered core programming, and those meetings often are leading up to planning some of our bigger long-term trips. And so these are some examples of what our long-term trips are in these different grade levels. So 7th grade, we spend 3 days up at UMaine Orono. That's usually our very first trip. We go up with them in 7th grade to just expose them to that college campus and start to build the team. Then in the spring, we go up to Acadia National Park for a weekend. And a lot of our students, surprisingly, haven't been to Acadia. So that's kind of an eye-opening, awesome experience for a lot of them. And it's not that accessible during tourist season, right? So we go a little bit earlier so that we have access to a lot of those places. In 8th grade is really where the students' voice and choice starts to play in, because they plan our entire 8th grade trip. We call it the Tour of New England. They can go anywhere they want in Maine, New Hampshire, or Vermont for 5 days, as long as they're following kind of the North Star guidelines with our 3 pillars, which I'll go into in a couple minutes. So we've been caving, we've volunteered at the Ronald McDonald's Children's House, we've swam in Lake Champlain, we've done all kinds of awesome stuff on that trip. 9th grade is a Penobscot River trip, so that's a 5-day trip up on the Penobscot, following Henry David Thoreau's path, and really experiencing that Maine backcountry. 10th grade is Urban Exploration Part 1, and our 10th graders right now are in the process of deciding whether we're going to spend 5 days in DC or New York City. Since Telstar Freshman Academy isn't doing the DC trip, I really hope they choose that one, because I think there's a lot of rich, amazing experiences that they can do in both places. And then 11th grade is our Urban Exploration Part 2, so it's kind of like an add-on to that. A lot of our students in rural communities have a really hard time transitioning into college and careers, especially if they're moving into more urban places. And so the more exposure we can get them to bigger cities, more people, more diverse cultures, that's really kind of the hope with those urban exploration pieces. And then 12th grade, our big trip, we have 2. One is in the fall, and that's whitewater rafting in the Penobscot, which you can't do till you're 16, so it's kind of a coming-of-age experience here in Maine, as well as climbing Katahdin. And then in the winter, we'll do a retreat that is kind of our celebration of what was and our future and what life's going to bring them and the successes that they'll be partaking in their future. So those are our core experiences, but there's a lot kind of in between that we offer students. Go ahead, Mike. So our 3 pillars are focused on adventure education and leadership. And this is where my background comes into play. I would drag them on expeditionary learning trips all the time if I could, but not everybody's super into being outdoorsy, so we try to spread that out. But we camp a ton. It's the best way for us to save money in our budget, so we try to go camping a lot. The resources that the 4-H Center has really promotes being able to be outside and being prepared in being outside. So we camp, we cook our own food, that's how we travel the most. And we really tried to focus, especially this last year, during COVID, Mike, I don't know what that is.
Thank you for spotting.
On our natural resources here in the Bethel area, we weren't allowed to travel with our vans. Our transportation was shut down during COVID, so we really focused on what our local community could offer. that families could get their students to. And so this is a picture up at Table Rock on one of our hiking trips. Cultural exchange is our second pillar, and so this photo is showing what is our North Star Preview Day. We haven't been able to do that the last 2 years because we aren't able to have community volunteers in the school building. But in the past, we've had over 20 volunteers come into the school building to do our Preview Day, which is our 7th grade experience where they kind of get an overview of what North Star is. So they do activities based on all 3 pillars. So our friend Mike Dubé is a Mi'kmaq storyteller. He came in and shared about his culture in that 7th grade history classrooms. And then Sav is the chef at Lane You Eats. They had their first opening night tonight, and he's been a partner with us from the very beginning. And he is from Laos, so he came in to share his childhood heritage with our students and did a cooking demonstration of mango sticky rice and hot peppers and all kinds of great stuff. And they've been partnering with us all along. They worked with us a lot on the community garden that I'll mention here in a little while. And then our last piece is our
It was
okay.
slow.
Community engagement and service. And I'm going to go into this in quite a bit more detail because it's been such an amazing way to watch students really engage and grow in their leadership potential by giving back to others and really learning what strengths and challenges come with living in our community. And so this is a picture of some of our 7th graders sewing hugs for cancer patients. And then this is another student doing invasive species removals with the Cape Elizabeth Land Trust, who we've partnered with in the past. So when we travel, we try to engage in these 3 pillars in the communities that we travel to, but we also try to bring those 3 pillars into the work that we do here in the Bethel area. Okay, Mike. The next 3 slides are a little bit of some of the college and career exploration our students have done. So on those big core trips, and whenever it's absolutely possible that we can weave in a college visit or a career opportunity, we do. So when we head up to the North Main Woods, we're hoping to meet with game wardens while we're up there, or guides, fishing guides, that type of stuff. So that kind of that workforce development and that aspirational thinking is behind everything that we're doing with students so that they're engaging as they go. And so this is our Tour of New England trip. These are some of our 8th graders a few years ago dissecting fish bellies because they're looking for microplastics in the waters of Lake Champlain. And so that's something that their little bit of lab time got to add to the data that's being collected for that whole summer. So they really felt like they were giving back to that community that they visited. Go ahead, Mike. This is our 7th grade trip up to UMaine Orono, and so not only do we go and visit, school goes often to colleges, they do a tour, they have a lunch there, trying to kind of just get kids used to those places. We dive deep, and so we sleep on campus in the climbing wall building. We go to the farm and learn about the different and new research techniques that they're using there. And then this other picture is a touch tank at the Aquaculture Research Center, which is, again, one of our favorite places to visit with students. And then this last photo is from our 7th grade trip to Acadia National Park. And these are some students out on the Osprey, which is the research vessel that College of the Atlantic has. And so we got to spend a whole afternoon out kind of checking out the different wildlife on the coast, talking about some of the environmental concerns that they have in that part of the world. And though it's still Maine, it's a completely different culture than the Bethel area. So that's kind of that great awakening piece for students. Okay, Mike? All right, now something I'm super excited about, and I literally could talk about all day, is this new piece. This is brand new. We're in year 5. We've learned a lot from what we've been up to with students over the last 5 years, and service is a really important hook. Empathy is really high with our kids. They love being engaged. They want to feel needed. They want to feel like they're part of our community, and so we've listened to that student voice and choice, and what they're excited about, how they want to give back, and also what needs our community is coming to us with. And so we've developed something we're calling Service Pathways. We're in the very beginning of the rollout of this, and we started piloting a couple of these programs this last summer. And so I'm going to go through just really quickly on all of these and kind of give you a brief overview of what it's looking like. But all North Star students will be involved in these service pathways, with the hope of when they get into the 10th and 11th grade ages that there are stipend leadership positions for them. Again, it's still in the making. It's something that I hope to develop and find sponsorship for, but I'll give you a little overview of what we're looking at doing and who we're hoping to partner with on these, or already have started partnering with. Okay, Mike? So So the first one is our agriculture, food, and livestock pathway. The students haven't renamed these, so these are kind of my boring names still. I'm sure they're going to come up with way better names as we get moving on this. But this is the second year we've been working on this pathway. Our oldest students, who are now in 11th grade, launched this as their long-term service project and kind of their legacy project that they wanted to leave behind. And so many of our students wanted to get involved as we started. We decided to make it North Star wide, and that's kind of where the service pathway sparked from. And so COVID year, I had to run the garden by myself, unfortunately, because we weren't allowed to work with students in person. But we kept it going, nice and strong to start this year. And so this is where Nabos used to be, the Stone Tree Creative Building. So Edible Bethel had been running this gardening place for a long time. And so in partnership with Edible Bethel, our North Star students have now taken over this space, and we have been working on grants and lots of other things to expand down into that big field behind Napa, across from the Modern Barn. I don't know if anybody's noticed those raised beds that have been built and kind of are shining down there with the bright metal roofing. Those are all coming from our students, our Telstar students, through about $10,000 that we raised in grants this year to keep that project moving. And so we delivered produce from mid-July to the beginning of November to 25 senior citizens in the area. That's what we chose to have all of the produce going to. And we took up a lot of the clients that Jim and James were delivering food to during the COVID, during the early parts of the COVID pandemic. So that's been amazing. And the intergenerational connections happening in some of these programmings, it warms my heart. And when we drop off produce, we walk people's dogs and we play piano for them. And I don't know, it's just been such an amazing learning experience on both ends. Okay. Handy Neighbors is another project that that has already started and we're in the beginning developments for. And this is in partnership with the Age Friendly Community Initiative, which is another group here in Bethel, and also Rotary and our Interact Club here at Telstar. And the Handy Neighbors program stemmed out of a lack of services for some of our seniors and some of our folks living with disabilities that are maybe on fixed incomes and things like this. So they might not have the extra income to hire a student to come and move their firewood or to rake the leaves that year. And so the students that are going to be involved in this are students that are maybe looking more towards the trades. So landscaping, carpentry, plumbing, all of these types of trades. And we're looking for volunteers with trade skills to want to get involved in giving back to some of the folks in need in our community. So these are some pictures of our students working on our raised beds this year. We also moved firewood for a gentleman this fall, and we'll be picking that back up this spring, and also looking for other projects. So if you know community members in need, please have them reach out to the AFC, and that will get to us eventually. Okay. The screen team, these are stock photos because this one is still in the beginnings. And so we've heard from the adult ed program and through some of our other senior serving groups in our community that there's a lot of folks who don't know how to Zoom or don't know how to use their new Apple phone that they got for Christmas or whatever it might be. And really, like Ryder said, relationships are the focus of North Star, and if we can't communicate with the people that we love, that's a huge gap for a lot of folks. So as you all know, our kids are way techier than probably anybody sitting in this room. And so I really want to play on those strengths and partner with our adult ed program and Western Foothills Access Television. A lot of my North Star students have been involved in the AV club in the past and are really passionate about that. And so that's something that we're looking to develop over time. And then we have two more pathways. Arts and culture crew. A lot of our students are theater students. They are into music. They're into movies, they're into all these things, and so I really wanted to bring that passion to the forefront and have these students really working hard to not only bring folks to Bethel, around culture, so arts, music, those types of things, but also for our students to figure out how to engage our young people in showing up for those events. Because there's a lot of stuff that actually has happened pre-COVID and now post-COVID, working on it. But our kids just maybe don't hear about it, they don't have rides, whatever it is, and so creating that network where students can show up. And then the other piece of this is that a lot of our students are really, really passionate about social justice and focusing on making our community a safe space for everyone. And so these are our students who will be working to really challenge North Star through the diversity, equity, and inclusion lens in all the programming that we do. So one of our goals, as an example, at the community garden is to make it handicap accessible, which is why we created elevated raised beds in our garden spaces to make it more accessible for all people. But right now, the terrain is not accessible. So that DEI group, this group right here, would be like, Lindsay, you're saying it's handicapped accessible, but it's not. Like, what are we gonna do about that? So really challenging us to hold the line of what we say we're doing to make our community really inclusive for everyone. And this group would also be partnering with BAM, the Bethel Area Arts and Music. And then our last one is our community pursuits and bicycle, our community bicycle program, outdoor pursuits and community bicycle program. So one thing that North Star has done in the past is offered community events to anyone, any family that wants to come can come ice fishing, as an example for us, with an example for the wintertime, something that we've done in the past. And so I want our students leading those activities. I want our students leading the after-school mountain biking club at MKA. I want our high school students to be able to learn these skills as they're coming up through North Star and pass those down to giving back to our families and our younger students in our community. And we started collecting quite a few bicycles over the pandemic, because if I couldn't drive them places, I thought we could just make a bike gang and get all around. And so I want to train some of our students as bike mechanics so that they can keep our fleet moving, so that they can work with Mr. Underhill as the district gets bicycles here in the buildings for use, and so they can get jobs. I mean, bike mechanics can get hired anywhere, so they can make side money for when they're young adults and out of our community as well. So workforce development is definitely the underlying theme and one of the major goals, as well as community connections in this new service pathway project. It's something I'm super excited about. Our students are really excited about it. But we need everybody's help to make this happen. We're in the process of hiring another staff member, which will definitely be a great support for myself in making all these big visions and dreams that I've been coming up with come true. But a lot of folks in the very beginning were a little bit nervous that they didn't want to commit to volunteering with North Star because they heard a 6-year commitment, right? But through our service pathways and activity mentors, if you just want to take kids skiing, that's totally okay. Come see me, we can figure out how to get you set up and trained and vetted so that you can take kids skiing, because that's your passion. What's better than you teaching your own passions to our youth? They really feed on that. So anyway, so these are ways that we're expanding to be able to bring in more community members to support the students. Okay, Mike? And the last couple pieces are a little bit about the data. So North Star is data and research driven, so are all the other AI sites across the state. And a big bonus to being a part of this grant is that we were given the funding to be able to do pair assessments, partners in education and resilience, which is a data collection system that usually costs a good amount of money. So through being partners in this program, we're able to get that. And basically, there are surveys that students are taking from their voice, and it comes out and tells us what they're struggling with and what they're succeeding at, just from their own perspectives. And that helps us determine programming on an individual level, but also on a cohort level for different groups and kind of where they're at and what needs they might have. And so after, well, this is year 1 through 3, but now we're getting on, I think, our 4th year worth of data. But this is our very beginnings here. And some really amazing data points came out of this that I'm pretty proud of. And these are statewide, and then we'll look a little bit closer at what's happening here with our local kids. So 93% of our youth report that the program helps them feel more connected to their community. That feels good. And that's going to solve a lot of our challenges over time if we can get these kids really connected to where they live and the people that live here. Okay, Mike? Another one, so for school board folks, our 8th graders also take surveys specific to 8th grade and 10th grade. And so this past year, 99% of our 8th graders participating statewide believe they will finish high school, and 88% believe they will pursue a post-secondary degree. That's pretty high, especially since college attainment in New England is one of the lowest. I mean, in Maine is one of the lowest in New England. And then I'm a relationship person. School's great, but my feels and my heart comes to those relationship pieces. And 95% of our students report that the program has helped them experience new places, and 89% said that the program has helped them accept people who are different from them. And again, with all the craziness happening in the world, if our students can be kind and loving and feel supported and accepted in the community that they live in, we're winning, right? Okay? And then locally, I love this picture. This is one of my most energetic students here, and we got to do a lot out on the water this year. But locally, the last year, our data is showing us two things, and these are just our local kids. So percent in positive change. So 84% of our North Star students are saying that they have positively changed in active engagement, which means they're moving their bodies more. And we all know that leads to better health results, mental health, physical health, all of those things. And so 84% of our students are saying they are really getting into being outdoors, moving their body. And I definitely attribute that to our local community connections, our support from Mount Abram, our support from the Outing Club, and also a little bit of a COVID skew because we were stuck here in Bethel, so all we had to do was be outside for like the whole COVID year. And we were allowed to be outside, and we didn't have to wear masks outside and those types of things. So I'm not surprised to see that one at all. The other piece is critical thinking. And that one also is a big deal to me. 84% are saying that they have improved in their critical thinking, and that's because we challenge them. We ask them questions. We ask them their opinions. They have to solve problems as a team, and they have standards of really taking ownership of the program. Okay, Mike? I would love to get into any more of this in more detail if anybody was interested. With all that being said, there's still work to be done, right? We're still coming out of a pandemic. There's a lot of unknown. A lot of our students are really anxious and struggling because they don't know what's happening tomorrow, the next year, down the road when they get to college, those age groups, those things. So we have seen either no change or negative change in trust and relationships and emotional control over this COVID year. And I'm sure that's not a surprise to anybody. It certainly wasn't a surprise to me. And that's through, as Ryder mentioned, we were able to support them on the daily, even when they were remote. And we're still seeing these numbers and these challenges. And that, again, is why that relationship building, that community connection, really diving into getting those kids excited about what's happening in this place is going to be super important for us as a school system. Okay? And then lastly, what can you do? What can you do as school board members, as faculty, staff of the district, or just constituents, like parents, people that live here? There's a bunch of things. You can support 4-H in general and the North Star program by showing up for our events. Come to our events, spread the word, share our announcements on Facebook, talk about what's happening, try to get other adults to come to our programs or to volunteer. You can financially support North Star. As Ryder mentioned, our grant money is running out. We have a year and a half left of guaranteed funding to make this program happen. And my biggest fear is to have to come back one day and tell my students North Star doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that would be crushing, especially with the strong relationships we've been building. So financially supporting a student, a cohort, an activity, anything like that, voting as a school board member, to help support North Star in the long term, to make that a sustainable program for the district. All of those things would be tremendous. And then lastly, volunteer your hours, your time, your energy, donate goods or services. Maybe you have a business. We're looking to put water in at the community garden. If you have any connections on that one specifically, that's something I'm looking for. And if you're a business owner, try to figure out how to hire young people. That's huge. There's so many 14, 15-year-olds that want to work and just don't have those opportunities. So that's what I challenge us as a school system to be thinking of for now. And I really appreciate your time tonight and the spotlight up here to talk to everyone, either at home or in the room. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things. Quality education is connecting the dots, right? I mean, this is exactly what's going on with the North Star program. And I just want to remind the board that 2 years ago, we started building a line item within our budget to try to be ready to at least help make that transition when the grant does run out. But this year we have $15,000 in the budget. We're hoping to expand on that next year, and it would be great to be able to get to a point where I think another agency could look at that and say, there is a real commitment on the part of the school district to maintain this, and by having that going for us, it's more likely that we will be able to be put in a position similar to what happened when Lerner funded us because of the relationship we had together with TFA. And I think that as you go into next year's budget, you can expect that there will be a request for an increase in that amount. And hopefully tonight, the information that you heard from Lindsay and Ryder will help you better understand the reasons for that. It's really life-changing. And one thing you didn't talk about, Lindsay, maybe you could just very quickly touch base on it, would be the process about how a student gets involved in North Star.
Yeah, sure. So in the 6th and 7th grade, or late 6th grade, early 7th grade, we meet with the teaching teams. We meet with teaching teams on a monthly basis. The North Star program coordinator and director does, just to kind of keep a pulse on what's happening in the building. So those teachers make recommendations for students who maybe might need a little bit of extra support. And so when we get into the 7th grade, we start trying to connect with those particular kids, but also are offering programs and activities and in-school supports for any student to kind of start building those relationships and participating in North Star activities. So then by the time February of the 7th grade comes, any student in the district in 7th grade is welcome to apply to North Star. There is no economic requirements or any other kind of demographics that we need for anyone to apply. It's open to all students in the district. And if we get more than 14 students to apply by the deadline date, then we do a blind drawing out of a hat to pick those 14 students, just to make it super fair across the board for everyone in the district. I've never had to turn anybody out. I've never had to, cap our numbers or anything yet, and I hope that doesn't happen ever. But yeah, and then as students move into the district or get older and hear how awesome it is and change their mind, then they still have the opportunity to come back in and reapply to North Star as they get older in the beginning of the school year every year. And then lastly, there's a lot of students who maybe aren't ready to commit to 6 years. Even for students sounds like a really long time and kind of scary for some of them. So we do this program called Friends of North Star. I used to volunteer with the Rotary Club, but I never could afford to pay my own breakfast, every week, so I never joined Rotary. So I was Friends of Rotary, so I made Friends of North Star. And so students, when we have extra tickets or an extra seat in the van to go places, or when we're doing our community service projects in particular, any student in the district can get their community service hours working with us and joining us in those community events. Because not only do we want to strengthen our internal North Star team, but we want to impact the rest of the building. We want to impact the other students as well through our positive experiences.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could just really quick, I just want to tie into something Dr. Murphy just said. So first of all, I want to take this opportunity to publicly thank the board and Dr. Murphy for the support so far. And then as far as the long term, it is one of the things I wake up every day thinking about, making sure that North Star continues, making sure that we're supporting Lindsay and our new hire, which will be announced probably in a few weeks, going forward, and most importantly, supporting the kids. By the end of 2023, we will have 6 cohorts of 12 to 14 students in this district involved in the program, and so we're not going to walk away from that. And I know this community won't walk away from those kids either. So our strategy has been, first of all, looking big picture, looking statewide, because the data from all of the Aspirations Incubator programs is very compelling when you look at it all together. So for example, going to the Department of Education, looking at how do we scale this up at a statewide level or even a national level through a youth development organization like 4-H. But then bringing it closer to home, so simultaneously with that strategy, we are looking to build support here locally. We've approached a number of private foundations, the River Fund, the Betterment Fund, etc. Norway Savings Bank has jumped in as a corporate sponsor at a modest level so far, but they are interested in supporting North Star for the long term because they are also very impressed by the outcomes. They're very pleased. So we will be revisiting this. We have a little less than 2 years to figure out what the long-term plan is. But again, I want to thank the board for their support so far, and really hope that we can all work together as a community to support North Star into the future. If anyone, one last thing, if anyone is interested in going deep on the data, I have print copies and PDF digital copies of the 3-year interim report that Lindsay referenced in the presentation. So Dr. Murphy has my email, or you can find me through the 4-H Center's website, and I'd be happy to send you a copy.
Did you have a question?
What percentage you've spoken of cohorts of 12 to 14. What percentage, therefore, of Telstar students actively participate?
Good question.
Roughly, I didn't mean to a single
I
point.
think roughly 10%.
10%.
I think it's higher than that.
Yeah, I think it's closer to 20-25%.
It would be if it's 12 to 14 per.
About 50 students, 50 to 60 students in any class, Mark.
In the middle school.
So 15 out of, I would say 45, 50,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
20, 25%.
Right.
Well, thanks for the same.
Sure, you're welcome.
Math is not my strong suit.
And then that doesn't include the friends, you know, so.
No,
she's
I-
getting 92% of the entire population.
Or peer leaders, so
Right,
students that were too old to be in our first cohort, some of them are volunteering.
Well,
Some of our seniors.
And I'll actually add a point to that. So just this past week, I was on a call. As I said, we're strategizing constantly to try to figure out how to support this in the long term. So I was on a call with some folks from the National 4-H organization. When you're a large, nationwide youth development organization, you deal in big scale numbers. You deal in hundreds of thousands of youth impacted, et cetera. So when we talked about the numbers involved in the Aspirations Incubator in the state of Maine, it's, as of the 3-year report, it was 356 students that were enrolled in Aspirations Incubator in the state of Maine. So that's a pretty small number. However, as soon as I said, but remember, these are all rural schools. These are small schools. We have 20% of the entire building enrolled in North Star, and the ripple effects through the Friends of North Star, through the fact that Lindsay and the rest of our staff are meeting with faculty, meeting with the guidance team, connecting the dots and helping to support the social emotional health and wellness of the students in this building. It's actually, the impact is much larger than what you might think.
Part of it really, and I'm going to embarrass Lindsay maybe a little bit, but it's her personality. She just attracts kids. And I can remember, it must have been like the first or second year of the program. We had an event here, I think it was parent-teacher night, and you were set up at the end of the hallway. And I was here and just kind of roaming around. And as the night went on, the crowd around Lindsay got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it's the same thing that's happening with the program. So you do a great job, Lindsay.
Thanks, Steve, appreciate it. Thank you all for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. The only other thing that I have is just to let you know that, speaking of relationships, we have a great relationship with What TV. Brooks is here tonight filming, and he and I have talked a little bit about ways that we might be able to figure out how to help support that organization as they work to help support us. So stay tuned. And that concludes Superintendent's report tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any old business, new business, adjustments to the agenda? And then we'll go to number 3. See what action the board wishes to take regarding continuation of the mandatory masking requirement currently in place in MSAD 44.
I make a motion that we continue mandatory masking until January 17th, 2022.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. And could you just say the date again?
January 17th, 2022.
All right. And discussion.
What's the significance of that date, since it occurs well before the next meeting of the board?
It gives families about a month, gets kids back in school after the holidays, gives time for families to make some decisions, right, on pool testing, vaccination. And our next meeting, I believe, was February 7th, so it's not that much farther.
Any further discussion on this? So, with that motion, could you state it again?
I made a motion to continue mandatory masking requirement until January 17th, 2022.
All right, and Maggie, you're good with that? You seconded that?
so that we can discuss it.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
confused on what happens next. Yeah, like that seems arbitrary before the next meeting, what happens on that date?
Just point of clarification,
Yeah.
if I could. So in effect, that's saying that as of January 18th, the masking requirement is no longer in effect.
Correct.
So, is there discussion on that motion? Maggie?
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting idea. And that might allow families to decide what they wanna do, but it also is, in essence, the school board saying that we are done masking on January 18th.
That's,
Not done, it goes to choice.
No mandatory.
No mandatory.
Yeah. So I just, wonder how we can see into the future at that point and make a decision now based on later, like, we don't know what's gonna happen. The way things are trending right now, this is not getting better before it gets worse. And so I just wonder why we would project, like, where does the reasoning come from that we would project things would be getting better so that we can take away the mandatory masking January 18th, when that is not what any of the data shows us at this time.
David?
Yes, I take that point very much so. Basically, we have rising infection rates in Maine. There doesn't seem to be any question about it. Delta is quite virulent. Omicron is spreading rapidly. The risks of the holiday season with its indoor gatherings are to some extent unknown and will certainly be inaccessible until well into January. And the fact is that, of course, while young people typically survive COVID, which is nice, they are also vectors if they contract it. It seems to me that this is not the time to relax precautions that are serving us well, and that certainly we should at least retain those precautions at least until the next meeting of the board, by which time in early February we would have a reasonable picture at least of what had happened over the holiday season.
Stephanie?
The last time we voted on this, we were asked to wait until all students were eligible for vaccination. We did not have pool testing up and running. We now have 100% of students eligible for vaccination. We have 100% of students that have access to pool testing. It's time to honor what we said we would do instead of continuing to push it out and out and out. We are now in a position where we are morally obligated to return bodily autonomy to our students, the families, because there are options available to every single student in this building. Pool testing is proven to be working. We have positive cases that are being detected in students before they're presenting symptoms. That's exactly what it's designed to do. I would hate to eliminate the masking and do that right before the holidays. I don't find that fair. But January 17th gives 2 weeks to come back to school so that we're not putting an unfair timeline on parents while still respecting and honoring what we said we were going to do at the last time we voted.
Carol?
I am a little concerned with the deadline on that, the date, because we are not offering remote learning, and if some parents and children are hesitant on coming to school without masks, we don't offer the remote. So I wouldn't vote for that.
We'll go Maggie and then Stephanie.
Do you want to take over?
Okay, yes, thank you. Stephanie?
I think that date puts us maybe even ahead of this, but historically, 2 to 3 weeks after our holiday break, we experience a surge of cases here, and now we have the Omicron variant, which is spread 70 times faster than Delta, which was already faster than the original one. It's, I think it would be really irresponsible to just lift masks at that time. It is projected that the Omicron variant in Maine is going to peak around sometime in January, and for us to pretend that we're not going to go back to the lost learning and the mental health issues. And I also think we heard from administration at the last meeting, and we had a discussion where it was pretty clear that everyone, all our building administrators, our dean of students, our school nurse, all did not think it was a good idea to change course at this moment. I think this could possibly be the worst moment to do so. With Delta variant, with Omicron, with flu, with the holiday, I honestly don't think we could construct a worse moment. Thank you.
Maggie?
I agree that we totally said we would revisit this. And I completely agree that an honor that we need to keep our word on that. So I'm appreciative of this coming up, last time as well as this time, and I also am appreciative of all of the work that has gone into the relationship of pool testing and mandatory masking to keep our students in school. The way that works in relationship that eliminates as much quarantine as possible. That's still true. And we cannot mandate vaccinations. And so that is not something that we can control. That's not something that we have any power over. And so what we can do is continue to work on the transmission. Even vaccination does not eliminate transmission. So masking is the safest course of action to eliminate transmission in the classroom, vaccinated or not. And so I cannot in any good conscience support relaxing the universal masking.
I would just ask the chairman, to my recollection, the idea that we would only be honoring our previous decisions by eliminating compulsory masking doesn't accord with my recollections. I don't have all the minutes of the last couple of meetings in hand, but I do not recall that anything beyond honoring a commitment to revisit the issue was ever a part of our decisions. And certainly I do not recall any commitment to terminating masking. Do you?
I don't believe there was. No, I didn't say that.
No, I didn't. No, I meant. Sorry, I was asking you as the chairman, not as someone who
Sure.
stated the. I beg your pardon.
I don't believe, but I will say, I do remember that was a large part of the conversation from both community members and board members, was making sure that, or waiting until at least all students were eligible for the vaccine. So no, we have no commitment, but I think what Stephanie was alluding to was the fact that it was part of the conversation. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amy?
I think my thing is for people to realize is, when do you think it will be time? Because this is gonna continue to mutate, and you're gonna continually see the next variant and the next variant. There really, if we look at the science, there isn't a way to stop this from continuing to mutate. It exists in animals, and you will never get rid of this. So when do these kids take these masks off and start to, my 5-year-old doesn't know what people look like. He's trying to learn how to sound out words. How do you learn that? You watch people's mouths. You're supposed to be learning how to read people's expressions, yet all you can see is eyeballs. I mean, realistically, So it's not that we're saying you can't wear masks, it's we're saying you don't have to. It's a choice. We can go into stores now, we don't have to wear masks. And the reason we do see these rises is because people are making personal choices that maybe aren't the best. And so we have a rise in cases because people have decided that they're going to go to that party. And whether there's lots of people there that are in their family, outside of their family, it's gonna raise the cases. And we can't be outside now. It's 8 degrees this morning, you know? So I think that is the thing to think about is when do you think the next variant is gonna go up?
Maggie?
When that healthcare staff tells me that it's time that we can take our masks off, when the Department of Ed tells me that, when the CDC tells me that, then that's when I will think that we can stop having mandatory masking, to answer your question.
Stephanie?
Does anybody remember when the US Attorney General told us that masking if you're asymptomatic is useless? And when Dr. Anthony Fauci seconded that, the science seems to continuously evolve. But Amy is absolutely correct. The reality is that COVID is here to stay. We are wrecking these children. It's not that I don't take COVID seriously. I have a 10-year-old who's probably going to need a lifetime of therapy because she is so afraid of getting her friends sick. But she also has an auditory processing disorder and she cannot understand someone with a mask on. She also has severe anxiety when she wears a mask. And you know what? We're ignoring mental health right now. We're ignoring physical health. I have another daughter who developed a staph infection from masking. We're normalizing that. We're calling it mask me. The only thing that worked for her was taking the mask off of her. When we hear the administration say that they don't have any problems, I am so hurt in my heart by that. Because these kids, they're suffering in silence. I had a little second grader. She took off her mask. There was crusted blood in it. She sat for 8 to 10 hours in that mask because she didn't want to get in trouble by saying something. We have got to do what's right by these kids. We have to do what's right by these kids. And if you find masking works for your family, then mask. If you find vaccination works for your family, then vaccinate. But that doesn't work for every family. And if it's not now, then when? Because this is not going away. What alphabet are we going to after the Greek letters are taken up? How many boosters is it going to require? Omicron, COVID was never affecting children the way it affected adults. Omicron isn't even affecting adults like Delta. This conversation is just tiring because there is no end to this.
Maggie?
Sorry, is it possible to make an amendment to the motion?
Yes, I would like to see it vote this down and then possibly a new motion. I don't have Robert's Rules of Order in front of me, but
Yeah, you can amend the motion, or you can let it ride and do what you're saying.
you would need a second to amend it.
Yeah, then you have to take a
Then
vote
you
on
have
the
to vote on
amendment.
the amendment. Right, you have to vote on the amendment.
Right.
So I'd like to amend the motion that we change the date from the original date to the next school board meeting date. To revisit, not to stop masking, but to revisit the issue. Is that a totally different motion?
I think so.
Well, yeah, you can amend it that way. You can go either route. I mean, it's
And on the
totally up to you.
amend, when you amend a motion, does the person who made the motion have to agree to
No,
it?
if there's a second and then you get the majority, then it's amended.
Okay. So,
But
So the amendment
you-
would read to change, the date to the
I mean,
next
you're,
Your cleanest way might be to vote it
down.
down if that's your
that's
intent.
essentially what you're doing,
That's
so,
fine,
yeah.
I can leave them.
Can I just want to reiterate the stance that the administration and the school district nurse took last meeting has not changed. We still feel very strongly that the masking is in the best interest of kids. To reiterate, I think what Stephanie and Maggie both said, you know, things are not heading in the right direction. We have 23, Rosemary, 25 positive cases right now. We have kids in quarantine. Omicron's coming. We're listening to the different presentations. I will tell you that before the whole Omicron thing hit, there was some discussion about trying to zero in on a metric that might give us an idea of when this could end up, you know, going away as far as the masking goes. Over the vacation break, there will be some conversations about close contact tracing and quarantining, with a hope to try to maybe rein that in a little bit. We're anticipating getting some information on that either right before we come back from the break or the first week back. And Rosemary, I don't want to put you on the spot, but just if you wouldn't mind, Danny, if it's okay, just maybe the latest update in terms of where things stand and where you see things going would be helpful.
So right now we have 23 cases in the district, and we have 45 quarantined because of exposure at school, 17 quarantined because of exposure outside of school. And the majority of the cases we've been seeing have been community transmission and not transmission here in school, which shows that we're doing everything right. We're masking, we're keeping the numbers down in school, we're keeping the kids in school as we can. But just like everywhere, we're seeing a surge right now, and I really think we need to continue masking for our kids. I've spent the last week, I've done nothing but contact trace. Mark and I contact traced all day today for 8 cases in the district, and that's when we're doing everything right.
Yeah, we're even looking at the possibility of trying to have somebody else come on board to help with that, because it's getting to be, you know, very time consuming. And honestly, you know, the conversations that we've had, we talked at one point about, you know, looking at the spring, you know, as another time to bring this up. But I mean, I think if you bring it up in February, that's fine, but it's gonna be the same conversation that we're gonna be having over and over again. But it's not like we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And believe me, we would all love to see masks go away. We would all love to see everything return back to normal. This isn't something that we're, you know, excited about at all, but we do think it's our obligation to do everything we can to just make sure that we give our kids every advantage possible to stay in school. And so far, so good. We've been lucky that way.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I also think that I just really want to honor Lisa in your comments, because it isn't just about our kids who are in school. It's not just about us. It's not just about the parents. It's about our community. It's about our family members who are at home, who are the most vulnerable of all of us. And so, not to get religious on everybody, but this time of year, we think about those who are most vulnerable in our community. We think about the least of these. We think about that, and we want to hold them, like it was said, right? If you are not caring for the least of me, the least of us, then you're not caring for me. And so, at this time of year, I would really like to hope that we think about those of us who are the most vulnerable and those of us who are having to worry about our 2-year-old little girls.
I don't think that it's fair for people to say that those of us who feel against masking don't care. My grandmother had COVID 2 weeks ago, so I know what it's like. She's 90. Thank God she beat it. She's all right. But we do care. It's not that we don't. It's that we care in a different way, and we're protecting different things.
Any further discussion? Stephanie?
I guess my point is I don't want us to go back to where kids are home all the time and spend all that lost learning again, all of the mental health issues, all the work that our building administrators and staff, I mean, we're at like a burnout level right now. To take this chance when there's so much unknown about this new variant and how quickly it will spread through our schools during, especially post-holiday, I just feel like we're not honoring the people who are in it every single day. And that's,
Just a couple of quick things too about that conversation that I think is going to be taking place over the course of the break. One of the things that we've seen, and I think somebody mentioned it tonight, is that we have kids who go out on quarantine and they have to be out for 10 days. And so what the DOE is looking at is the possible change, or not the DOE, but probably other people at the state level as well, you know, the Maine CDC and so on, looking at ways to allow the kids to shorten up that quarantine time. So right now, if you're out for 10 days, you're out for 10 days. If you test negative, it doesn't mean you can come back. So a couple of things that I think are percolating out there would be the possibility of allowing kids to come back if they do show a negative test. And then also the use of home testing, which is something that is not being allowed right now, as far as being able to qualify for coming back. Don't know if those things are going to happen or not, but I know that those are the kinds of things that are being talked about, as well as maybe, I won't say relaxation, but a change in the amount of contact tracing that has to be done, because contact tracing right now is happening in schools much more than it is really anywhere else. And so I think what's happening is the Maine CDC is listening to those kinds of things, and they're looking at it to say, okay, what can we do? And I think that the goal that they have is to at least look at the amount of time kids are already missing school because they're being quarantined, and trying to figure out ways to not make a kid stay out 10 days if there's a way to get them back in 2 or 3.
But if they were participating in the pooled testing, they wouldn't have that issue.
Correct.
Because they,
But if they're not, then they're quarantined, and if they're not,
but if they're
then they'll
willing
be
to
out
go
for good.
get tested after the fact, then they have the opportunity to participate weekly, and that's a choice that they made.
That's correct, but you could still have half of your students out if they chose not to do that. In which
Vaccination
case,
also
yeah,
limits
excuses.
quarantine as well,
Right.
so.
When you go through the SOP, you have 4 exceptions to quarantine. The mask exception is the only one that then has exceptions to the exception. It doesn't actually eliminate close contact, it moves it from 6 feet to 3 feet. It doesn't apply to teachers, it's student to student only. And it pains me to be the one who's pointing this out, but we're not actually following that, because one of the exceptions to the exceptions is that the school is enforcing well-fitted masks. When you look up what the Maine DOE and what the Maine CDC describe as a well-fitted mask, I have never worn a well-fitted mask in this school building. That's not a well-fitted mask. That's not a well-fitted mask. Maggie, I can see your nose. Nobody is asking at the door. So every time we say a kid can stay in school because of masking, we're out of compliance. It's all a facade. This is not about anything else, because that exception is not even being followed. You want to test it? Let's go outside. Breathe into the cold air. You'll see it come out of every side of your mask. OSHA has very clear guidelines for what a well-fitted mask is, and none of us actually do that. So it pains me to be the one, once again, to point it out, but we got to stop letting kids stay in school unless we're going to be checking them out the door and making sure that they have the nose piece or the fitted piece. There are actual piece-by-piece guidelines for ensuring that your mask is well fitted, and we're not doing that.
Amy?
Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center will not let you enter with a cloth mask now, because they don't find it to be effective. So if you come with a cloth mask, you're given a medical grade mask, because it doesn't meet their standards. And I hold them to a pretty high standard, so if they don't think this works, you know,
But they require you to wear a mask.
they do,
Yeah.
but not a medical.
But they require you to
that
wear
the
masks.
kids are
so.
wearing those though?
A well-fitted mask, that's what the SOP says. The school is enforcing well-fitted masks. That's the only way to get around that one quarantine exception.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, just to reiterate the motion, it is to, Stephanie, I'll let you say it if you would.
To continue mandatory masking requirement until January 17th, 2022.
Last call for discussion before.
And am I correct that the implication of that is that the mandatory masking ceases on the morning of the 18th?
Right.
Correct. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor? 5. And opposed? 6. I have the motion fails 6 to 5.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
That
That means we
pretty much
would return to, or
regular, continue
the
masking.
mask mandate.
So there's no need for another motion at this point.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 4, see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the 2022 meeting schedule for the MSC 44 Board of Directors. Make a motion.
Make a motion, we approve?
Thank you.
I'll
Second. Wendy, thank you.
And just basically, this is taking the schedule that we've used for the last couple of years and just rolled it forward. We eliminated a January meeting a couple of years, 3 years ago maybe, because right after the holidays and going into January, there wasn't a lot happening. So instead, we moved the February meeting up, so it's an early meeting in February. The only change you'll see on this schedule is that currently, all of the meetings are scheduled to be here. And if such time that changes, we end up going back into the buildings, you can always make that adjustment later on. Otherwise, it's the same schedule you had last year.
I'm new here. What's the April 25th if necessary?
That's typically a budget-related issue, so we go through some budget workshops,
Thank
and
you.
if we have another meeting necessary, we meet
Thank you.
that night.
The only question I had, seeing that we have 3 people not here tonight, would it be wise at some point to look at possibly moving the December meeting up a week?
December meeting?
Yeah, I think it's on the 19th. Is that right?
Oh, for next year?
Yeah. Just
It's up to you folks.
It seems like, I mean, you don't usually have 3 people absent, so I'm wondering if it's.
Oh, I see what it's based on that.
Well, I think that none of them are related to the date. I think there are 2 people that can't make it just because they're not well, and I think there's another person that has a job conflict.
Okay, I didn't know if people were traveling or whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the case in any of them.
All right,
I'd say leave it alone.
yeah. Any further discussion on the meeting dates? All in favor?
Thank you.
All right, number 5, see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of a second and final reading of revisions to policy JICA dress code. And the policy committee has a recommendation. And
Policy, yeah. We recommend approval.
Thanks, Tammy. I would just say that I have not received any questions or any concerns from any board members since the last time. You remember Mr. Kenny and Ms. Lecce brought this forward with recommendations following a full year's worth of conversations with different groups in the school.
further discussion on the rest of the policy? All in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you.
And number 6, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the first reading of policy BED, new remote participation in board meetings. Would you like to make a motion,
I'll make
Stephanie?
a motion to approve the first reading of policy BED, new remote participation in board meetings.
And second, Wendy?
I will just say that This was a monster in terms of just getting it to you, but I think it effectively captures the conversation that took place in November. What it does is it removes the concern that was initially expressed about the fact that if you had a situation where any one person had to be participating remotely, then it would cause the entire meeting to go remote. The motion I believe that Mr. Jones had made at the last meeting was to return to, or to go with the option that said in the event of an emergency situation, the board chair and the superintendent could determine that the meeting would go remote. And that would be in the event of, another pandemic or a severe weather situation, in which case typically we would just postpone the meeting. But this gives you the option that if some other kind of thing should happen, then you have that option. This motion, this policy now in its current phase, and I worked very closely with Bill Stockmeyer, the attorney from Drummond and Woodsum on this, and I think it addresses the fact by that last paragraph in it talks about if you do have a situation where there's an ADA, it makes it clear in the policy that that does not require the whole board to change. Instead, it gives you the ability as required to meet the ADA request. So I'm confident that it sums it up, and I hope that you feel the same way. And I apologize for sending you like 15 emails over the weekend or whatever it was, but thank you.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous? All right. And number 7, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding entering into an executive session for a periodic review on the goals of the superintendent of schools. Motion?
Yeah, you'll not be coming back into open session after this.
Correct.
No action will be taken, so.
Could you explain that, sorry? Does it mean now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In the absence of any preliminary paperwork
We usually
explaining
will
what
take-
this is all about?
We'll take like a 5-minute break and let everybody clear out, and then reconvene and
Whatever.
discuss.
Thank you.
Anybody like to make that motion to enter into executive session?
I'll make a motion.
Cheryl. Carol.
Cheryl and Carol?
Yep. And all in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
5-minute break?
And Mr. Chairman, just to be clear for the Zoomers, because we're not coming back to any action, we will end the Zoom at this time.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you for coming, folks. Happy holidays.
Ho, ho.
There are some refreshments up there. Please help yourself.
And the only reason I was a little surprised that, we
The
could
dead
have
cat.
anything in anticipation.
Danny, I'm gonna pack everything, I'm gonna take this over to the administrative room. But if someone, when you're done, would just let me know.
Yep.
Cause I'll have to bring it back in here and put it away.
Changed. Day before they came back, she had to find a little tent in downtown.